Oof. Oops, looks like I'm not starting right now. I'm going to put me on the starting soon screen again. And I will be right back after I run to the other side of the house. Okay. I think that's everything. I should be set up to actually start now. Hi, Sunbay. So I posted the video of the Korok, but I did make a slight change to the bell. I have cat toys. Well, technically they were rabbit toys that my rabbit doesn't like, and that's exactly what goes inside of a stuffed animal. Basically, the metal bell inside of a plastic ball. So I shoved one in there, sent the video to the person who's buying it. They like the bell, so I am going to give it a very awkward stitch up, and that will be ready to mail out this weekend as well. So, yep, they like that bell. I got a little bit more jingle than the last one. No idea if the microphone actually picks it up, but it does jingle. And so that's good. And I didn't have to go out and find a new bell because my rabbit wasn't going to play with those toys anyways. He played with them for all of maybe 12 hours, and then they were no longer interesting. So I did not post going live anywhere. I should do that. Okay, I'm doing that, and then I will come back and sew this guy together. I don't know how to post a story on Instagram without being on my phone, and I already have a post from yesterday that's still getting likes there, so I don't want to put a second one because I don't have any actual new picture art to put there. But I posted on Twitter at least. So that's my second highest follower count, and I don't think it's very high at all. But I will have to probably this weekend. I'll work on just some generic little pictures that I can post up for going live. I'm gonna add that to my little list of things to do. Yeah, a link to do that would be cool. Hi, Miles. Still getting everything kind of set up right now. Learning how to promote myself. Yeah, I know how to post that way. Um, and I did the post like that on Instagram yesterday. I was trying to get it as like the basically the TikToks of Instagram. Um, I used to be able to do that on my computer. I don't have that option anymore. So they might have updated something. I will investigate this later. I do want to try and get sewing stuff done today. Instagram is not my favorite account at all. Not huge on everything there, but it does have the most followers out of any of my social medias. Probably just because I've had the longest. I need to just start building up my other ones as well now. Um, but I think I've actually gotten more commissions and more interactions from Twitter, which I also don't know how to use, but I'm learning. So I'm going to start off with just sewing this guy together now that he's got the bell inside. And then after that, I do have the embroidery file that I designed yesterday for the paw, as well as I quickly threw together one for this one that's basically just a couple of lines on the inside. But that'll at least give me the lines on the actual paw when I sew it together to make sure everything lines up with the bottom and the top. And then I got my printer scanner to work yesterday, so I just quickly traced up the ear parts. I'm going to cut them out and put two of them together so I can put those onto the head just to see the overall shape of them as well. So that's my big plan for today. After that, after I get this guy embroidered and I'm sewing it together, I also do have two orders for lambs that I'm probably not going to put together today, but I can do the face embroidery because that's fairly hands off once I get it all set up. I always forget about tags being a thing. Yeah, I need a little notebook of all the things that I need to know just to remember them all. I'll get there. Okay. So this little Korok I pretty much had pre-made. It's been sitting around in my bin of things for a while now. I made a bunch of them all at the same time as well, and then I've just been slowly selling them off over time. But the bell was a new addition, so I cut it open in an incredibly awkward way. Poor guy. And now I put the bell in and I'm just going to stitch it back up, which is not going to take me long at all. And then this one will be ready to mail out this weekend as well. Yeah, I'll probably make a little checklist or something and put it on my desk right above my computer. Um, just so I remember to go through things. I make lists for a lot of stuff. It basically my memory is stored outside of my head on a piece of paper. Oop, not. Don't do that. Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Enjoy your lurk, Miles. Absolutely. I won't be streaming tomorrow, but I will be back on. I am also on Discord. I'm in Judo's Discord under the name Clockwork Moose. If you find me there, you can send me a message. Um, Otherwise, I will be back on Monday doing more streaming stuff. I don't know what I'm gonna do. I've got a couple of custom plushies to work on and a couple more quotes that I need to give. So I might have more after that as well. But yeah, anything that's new and unique shapes that I don't have in my portfolio yet, I would be highly interested in making at lowered costs just to get them into my portfolio, basically. My Discord was Clockwork Moose. If you didn't hear that one yet, yeah, I didn't look over a chat. I'm not sure if you wrote that before or after I was talking, but yeah, Clockwork Moose. Okay, so Korok is sewn up. Because I did cut the threads to open him up, I did go past that hole a little bit just to make sure that that cut is now extra secure. So it should not be coming apart at all now. tiny scissors. And there we go. So now the Korok has a bell in it. So I'm going to just go and drop this off in my finished things pile. It goes into a little bag, so there's not really any boxing up for me to do of this one until I print out the label and send it out. I don't print the labels until the day of mailing things, just because when I print the label, it marks it as ready to ship and sends a message to the person who bought it. And then if it sits around for a few more days before I get to the post office, I feel really guilty about that. So I normally print off the labels on Fridays, so I'll do that tomorrow, and then I mail them out Saturday morning. So this one's just going to go into a pile right now, and it'll get all ready to send tomorrow. Okay, so what I'm going to start on now is this paw here. I do want to do this underside first because this is going to have that mochi minky to hopefully like puff up and make those little paw pads. So I'm going to go ahead and cut out the fabric and stabilizer and get this one ready to embroider. So I will turn the camera onto my embroidery machine. And then I'm going to need a piece of fabric about that size. So this entire outline is going to be stitched out by my embroidery machine, so I don't actually have to trace it onto the fabric, but I do need a piece of fabric that's about that size. So I did print this out just so that I can get that fabric size from it. There we go. I'm also going to be using a slightly smaller hoop today. This one is my 260-200, so it's 100 millimeters narrower or shorter, top to bottom, than my largest hoop. This will just fit that paw nicely. Generally, when you're doing an embroidery, you want to pick the smallest possible hoop to fit it. That's a pretty good size hoop that I'm going to be using. So this one is a 12 by 16 stabilizer. The other one was a 12 by 20. So I'm going to just cut off 4 inches from a different piece of stabilizer for this one. And I'll use that little bit of stabilizer in my sewing machine later on when I am putting all these little toe V's together. Move that out of the way. Oh, yeah, if you can, that would be real cool. I need to figure out chat moderation and everything like that. I see that I have the ability to pin things yesterday, and like I've got little symbols, so I'm assuming that's how I get rid of something, but beyond that, I don't really know anything about it. I've never done anything chat moderation before. Move that out of the way. Okay, so this little tiny bit I'm actually going to take to my sewing machine. When you do put those little tiny V's together, you're sewing on a very small bit of fabric. So it helps to actually have the stabilizer underneath it just to hold everything down and in place so that your sewing machine doesn't try to eat the edge of the fabric. So we will hopefully see that little guy later when I am sewing the paw together, assuming everything works out properly there. I don't see any options on the top. I have a little like circle with a cross through it, a clock, and a trash can in front of people's names, and that's it. When Pick got caught by Automod yesterday, that showed up just as like a chat thing underneath her message, and it just had like allow or disallow next to it. Oh, okay, that thing. Okay. When I hit allow there, does that mean it allows it permanently from now on, or just that one time for Pick? Okay, allows for everyone. Okay, that's good. Okay, so that's going to be the vague general shape of where I need my fabric to be, just to get that there. This is actually centered in my hoop right now. The reason it doesn't look centered is I just need space in the back for the foot of my machine to come down. So the hoop is actually a little bit larger than the working space of the hoop. But that is centered. Now I'm going to just cut a piece of fabric about that size. And I am using a very light gray today. This is just very cheap fabric of various colors. Whenever it goes on sale, I grab whatever the local Joann Fabrics craft store has, and then I use it until I'm out. So this is one of my smaller pieces of stuff. I'm just grabbing it for today. The fabric brushes that way, so I want the nap or the fuzziness of the fabric to brush down towards the toes, so I'm just going to cut it that way. And little cutter, and there we go. Yeah, it's very helpful that there is a cheap fabric with the same amount of stretch and fluffiness as the expensive stuff because I can then do this. If I was working all on my really expensive fabric, I would basically just try it in one shot and whatever you get, that's it. This, yeah, again, this stuff is like $8 a yard versus the stuff I'm using is 13 to 20 in the final plushies. So, very nice to have something that is like half the price. It allows me to make mistakes and mess things up without panicking about it. And I am just putting little bits of blue painter's tape around it to hold everything down in place. The very first stitch that it does, the way I designed the embroidery file, it is actually going to do the outline for me. Um, but I want to make sure that it is held down until that outline comes in and does everything there. So, and I'm putting it in that way. So I'm just going to have to make sure that my file is centered in the hoop as well, and it'll come in and put it right there. So we're going to go over to my machine. I still have the red thread from the capes in there from yesterday. So just going to swap back to a white bobbin thread. That's just the cheapest bobbin thread. Okay, just want to make sure everything lines up. Okay, toes points up. Um, yeah, I'm going to use a black for this part, just so that those lines really stand out on the gray. I'm not going to put the stabilizer down quite yet. I'm going to let it just do its thing there. Won't be a perfect line. Okay, so there I have my outline. That's going to hold everything down. The next part that the machine is going to want to do are just the lines that I drew across it. I normally on the finished plushie, like the final version, I would be putting down a water soluble stabilizer, basically a piece of plastic that melts in water, just to make sure that those lines stay completely smooth and none of the fuzzy bits stick up in between the threads. But because this one is just a test and I do want to use the stabilizer later on, I'm not going to put it down now. I'm just going to stitch it out as is, put down the little paw pads, and then put down the water soluble stabilizer on top of that. So there we go. While that one embroiders out, I am going to cut out the other pattern pieces so that I can then cut a piece of fabric to embroider on the top of the paw pad, and I can actually cut out the ear bits and sew them together and put them onto the head. Yeah, is it Bob Ross the painter who says it's not mistakes, it's just happy little accidents? I make quite a few happy little accidents in making plushies. But whenever you mess something up, you do learn from it. Unless it's you've messed up multiple times in a row, which I have done before, which in that case you're just learning don't do the same thing again. It makes the same error. Um I do make quite a few mistakes. That is all part of the learning and getting better part of it. There's also times where I don't know if something is going to work, and so to find out, I just wing it. I will save this piece of fabric for later on. That's big enough that I could potentially use it for something like the paw pads of a different animal. I could do something with that one. So this one will go into my bin of fabric scraps. The little guys I usually toss though. But there we go. That will be the fabric for the top of the foot there. Insanity, making the same plushie 4 times because you cut out the fabric wrong like all 4 times. Okay. So that's the top of the ear. There'll be 2 of these, one for the front and one for the back, and then this is the base of the ear that they will attach to. So this part of the pattern, this curve right here, is actually going to fit around the head. Well, if everything works out, it will fit around the head. That piece will actually go along this bottom line here. It doesn't look like it has the same curve right now. Let me switch. Big camera. It doesn't look like it has the same curve on the pattern piece and on the plushie there, because the fabric is going to stretch sideways. So this right here will actually stretch out to fit along the bottom there, which is part of the reason I do make all of these patterns. And like, I make the fake ear first and then draw on it, tear it apart, and put it back together multiple times, because finding this exact curve to match this one is very difficult without actually doing it in a 3D like shape there. But with the stretch of the fabric, that should then fit around there, which is what we're testing today. So hopefully that's right. And I'm going to get some of my pattern weights, which are literally just heavy washers from a hardware store. But these hold them down on the fabric, so then I can cut around them without having to actually trace with a marker first. So one base, and then I need 2 of the tops of the ears. I've got the one there. I am going to draw little marks on there where I've got my little lines. This is just so I know which parts to connect where. And then I'm going to do one flipped pattern piece on the reverse. Let's see, is that the best place for it? Yeah, I don't have much bits sticking out, so I'm going to just cut it there, and I'll waste that little bit there. Hi, Conti! I'm the one streaming today. So I'm not going to keep that piece. That's just too small for me to do anything with. But Okay, so those are the three pieces there that I need for the ear. I will put that together as soon as I take care of my embroidery machine. Move that paw out of the way for now. So this is my Mochi Minky. This is the extra stretchy stuff that I'm going to be using for those paw pads on the test. I just need a piece that's about that size. So I'm not wasting a lot more. I'm going to just kind of trace it off of here. We're going to go there and there. Okay. Yeah, this is a big reversal right now. Normally when I am sewing, I'm watching other people stream, and I have no idea what raid dropped me off on Conti, but they've been one of the people that I end up watching a lot. So now I'm the one streaming today. Okay, so there's my super stretchy stuff. I'm going to go put that on top of the paw, basically right where it's going to be on the embroidery, and then it's going to trace out the bits. They're actually going to turn into the toe beans there. Okay, so there's my paw pad. I don't need any of the extra stuff around it, so I have to just go and carefully snip all the way around each one of these now. So, riveting content time. I usually just watch Twitch while I'm working. Something about people being live and doing things there. Uh, if I know what to expect, pretty much, I tune it out and then I'm not actually paying attention. So I don't watch a lot of like shows or uh YouTube videos or things that I'm capable of going back and pausing and watching later because it doesn't really activate whatever part of my brain it is that needs something happening in order to function. I work much better if I have somebody else live in the background, and Twitch has been really fantastic for that. Just having other streamers doing whatever they're doing at the same time. So I usually have a video on in the background, and I'm mostly listening to what they're doing, or when I'm sitting working at my computer, I'll have a little window off to the side so I can kind of follow along while I'm working, just watching whatever they're doing. But not being able to like replay or go back or anything like that, it registers in my brain as like a live human being, whereas a show or a YouTube video, like something pre-recorded, doesn't trigger as being a real life human being. It's more just a entertainment, I guess. So the live aspect of Twitch is really, really cool. I actually did not know that Twitch was even a thing up until I made a plushie for Altariana. Picanha Pick hired me to make that for her. I know her in real life. We were friends before we all moved to different states. Um, but she hired me to make the plushie, and in order to get a nice reference image, I ended up going to Twitch and watching him play. I don't even know what game. I think it was probably Spyro. And it was like, oh shit, this is fantastic. How did I not know this existed until now? And since then, I've pretty much had Twitch on from 8 to 5 every single day. Yes, very much the FOMO kind of thing, but not so much missing out, because a lot of times I will be like sitting in front of my embroidery machine that makes a lot of noise, so I can't hear what's going on. So I do miss out on things a lot, but it's still like the live person that I'm watching. And yeah, that just kind of triggers as the, oh, I've got to work because there's a real person here. Okay, so the minky, the little mochi minky paws are there. And they're already fairly stretchy, so they are already nice. But in order to keep them as puffed up as possible, I don't want the backside of the fabric to stretch at all. I only want the mochi to stretch. So I'm going to get a piece of stabilizer that does not tear away, and I'm going to put that right there so that it actually stitches through it, and it kind of gives stability, some support to the backs of the mochi paw prints there. And I'm probably going to wiggle the camera like crazy because I have to move the frame in order to get that stabilizer. Okay, so I need to work on that part of my setup. Yep. Okay, so this stuff doesn't rip at all. It's just like a fabric, papery fabric that won't rip like the paper there. So I'm just going to cut a small little bit to put on the back of the paw print there. Not that side because that side is very wrinkly. Yeah, right there works. And then I'm going to tape that down in place and then do the rest of the stitches, the satin stitch around the edge, which is essentially just a bold line. So I'm going to do that to hold all those little guys in place, and all the fuzzies from the edges will just be captured in that satin line as well. Yes! I should turn this plushie into a weapon. That is exactly what the commissioner wants. At one point, they were considering doing the paw pads out of a squishy gel-like material, which I do have the gel for. So I'm now that they want the mochi ones, I'm gonna make those. But I'm still gonna experiment around with making gel paw pads so that you just get the like the squishy gel feeling there. Because I think that would be something really cool to offer as an option as well. There we go. Okay, so that's the stabilizer on the back there. Then I'm going to put the water soluble like plastic on top just so that all of that fuzz is actually captured and squished down by that line. I feel like I've seen that happen in a movie where someone's just got a toy and then they pull out like a massive oversized gun, and I love it. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to just put that back in. I'm going to just use black for this, the outlines, because it's already in my machine, and I'm lazy. So that satin line is going to be 2.5 millimeters wide. So I'm hoping that's enough to catch all of the fuzzies. Normally I do something that's more like 4 millimeters wide. But because the Minky is so thin, I hope that I can get away with the thinner ones. It just gives me more paw pad to squish with the stuffing. So we're going to see if that works. If not, for the next version, I can make the line a little bit wider, or I will know to cut even more fuzzies off of it. But this is all just testing, so that's what I'm doing. I don't know what that doll is. What happened there? Oh, damn. Okay, I will. I will check Discord after tonight. Okay, I am going to sew this ear together. So let's see if the camera on my sewing machine is set up. Maybe not. Yeah. Ball sack cheeks. Okay, I am intrigued. I really hope you're not joking. I want to see this. Didn't have to pin the top two together when I sewed that just because they are exactly the same shape and size. I did pin the base to the two there just because I have to bend this fabric around that curve and I want it to stay in place. So now that that's done, I'm going to go and sew those together and then come back and fit it onto the head and hopefully it works. Oh, Automod doesn't like that. Okay. I don't know. Like, I am sure we had crazy shit, but I mostly just watched like Saturday morning cartoons, which were normal by most standard. We had the four kids cartoons that got censored to hell and back. Uh, that's mostly what I would watch. So nothing wildly crazy. Lots of Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh. That's what I grew up watching. Hi all. Yes, I am making foot today, as well as a couple of ears. So if this one works, I'm going to be making a second version of it. I just need some stuffing and then to see if it actually works. Oh, it helps if I'm on the right camera when I'm pointing at things, doesn't it? This is the ear. I'm really good at streaming. Okay, I got some of my lumpy stuffing. Just enough to give the ears some actual shape. And then I'm going to pull out my acupuncture pins and attach the ear that way. And that was that curve from this piece where it stretched out to fit where I want it to, so I'm happy with that. That looks good. Once I put a little bit more stuffing in it, that ear will have the proper shape. Okay, then I have to be careful when stuffing it because all of these pins that I just put in are currently pointing directly into where I'm going to be stuffing the stuffing into. Yep, found one with my fingers. And I just need to pin up the back, which I will grab some pins from the guy's body. I will often store pins in the prototype versions of plushies. I won't store them in the final versions, though, as well as needles. I won't stab them into the plushies there, just because I really don't want to lose something sharp and forget about it and then mail it out to whoever's getting it with something sharp attached to it. That just feels kind of dangerous to me. So there we go. That's going to be my ear shape. I do like that shape. I think it turned out well. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to make a second one of these ears so that I can attach it to the other side of the head there to see how well it looks with both of them attached. Yeah, another streamer that does arts and crafts and stuff, she has a stab counter of how many times she stabs herself in the stream. Um, I have stabbed myself at least once every single stream so far. I have a supply of band-aids right here in my craft room because you don't really want to stab yourself and get blood all over the thing you're making. It's not ideal. And my pattern weights again. And add my markings to that one too before I forget. And one more piece. I'm going to beat my embroidery machine on making the ear. Fantastic. And put little lines on that one too. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to go sew these two lines together, the two matching parts of the top of the ear. That'll be eventually this line right there. So I'm going to put those together and then come back and pin it to that one. I got to put the little center line on this one. That's okay. You can just fold it and get that line there. There we go. Uh, oops. That's okay. I've got, oh no, that was my final pin. So now I can change the camera to where it's supposed to be. Oh, embroidery machine beat me. But I can bring them both back over to the table. Nope. There we go. Okay. So I have my ear done. So I can pin that one in place. And I will actually probably stitch these both down because I do like the shape of them, but I'll just use a big, quick to pull out stitch so that if these are the wrong shape and the commissioner doesn't like them, I can just pop them right off and put new ones on afterwards in place. So that'll sit there for now. I want to take this foot apart though and see how I did. So this is my water-soluble stabilizer. Just shred that off. Okay, and there are a couple of places here. Let's see. Whoop. Right along the edge of the star, some of the pink is coming on the other side of my stitches. So I'll have to know for next time I either need to make these stitches a little bit wider or I have to cut it a little bit closer. But that is pretty good for a test. I've got them all down and everything worked out fairly well. Now I get to take this out, cut it out, and I'm going to embroider the back side of the arm, sew them together, and then after that I will then stuff these paw pads, and that is when I will finally know if it worked or not. I think it's going to be pretty good though. Like, I can take this and already pull and stretch it quite well. So that level of stretch I'm kind of happy with. That's going to be a nice squishy paw pad, I think. So we'll see. The actual fabric I'm going to be using for these paws should finally hopefully be arriving today. So I am looking forward to that. Once that has arrived, I can actually make the paws, and that should be the last fabric I need to be delivered before I can start making this plushie fully. So I just need to get the tests done, make sure the ear shape is right, and then start cutting this thing up so I get the lines in where they're supposed to be. Hi, Picanha! I'm making feet today. Feet and ears. Yes, Pete's with beans. So there we go. Some nice beans on that one. And I need to cut a new piece of fabric. Oh, I forgot some of the stabilizer on the top there. Okay. I need to cut a new piece of stabilizer for that one. I may or may not make any of the lambs today. I'm not going to be sewing them up at all. I do have the two orders, and they're both for the neutral faces, so I could sew up the two faces. I might not do that today, though. I might just, once I finish the foot and the ears, um, that might be it for a bit today. Yes, the lambs have all been eaten. Them's gone. Okay, so this one I need a 12-inch piece. Let's squash everything out of the way. But it only has to be 12 by 16 inches, so I'm going to cut it off there and then use this little extra for the sewing part of the foot. And again, I am going to draw my lines to center things. And there's my vague general shape of where my fabric needs to go. And it's going to get taped down in place as well. There are a lot of supplies from the hardware store that go into plushie making. Like, I've got painter's tape here to hold things down because it holds well enough without, like, pulling the fluff off of the fabric like a duct tape or masking tape might. My pattern weights that I use to hold things down are just a set of extra large washers that I bought at a hardware store. Oh, medical too. When I need to stuff things, I have, I don't remember the name of them, but these are what surgeons use when they are stitching people up. Not a Kigu. Actually, I did show the picture yesterday when I was making the paw prints. Let me see if I can figure out how to pull up another picture and put it into OBS. So I can at least show you what I'm making rather than just all of my blue and gray bits there. Yeah, Kigu, you got it right. Kigurumi. Woo! Oh, that's big. Yep, everything for my prototypes is just scrap fabric, the really cheap stuff that is not super fluffy but has the same properties as my nice fluffy fabric. Um, it, yeah, let me pull out a nice piece. Okay, they're covered with fuzzies. Let me see how well this camera works. We're gonna test this out. This is really nice minky. It's got everything kind of even, nice, small little fuzzes to it. Whereas this is my rougher minky. It doesn't have the same level of fluff to it. No idea if that actually shows anything. But the high quality minky is just much nicer. It's thicker. It's got more body to it, and it feels nicer. Whereas the cheap stuff will stretch the same way, so I can make it a test out of it. I wouldn't want to sell something with that though. Now that I know that there's better minky out there. Legal problems with making things like the lamb plush. A very gray area, actually. So, if I'm making them by hand and I'm not copying something else, they technically fall under the qualification of fan art. And fan art has a very gray legal zone where technically, no, you're not supposed to be ever making anything off of other people's IP, but fan art falls into the weird category of it's not their work, it's just their concepts. So most companies will have a policy of looking the other way until you start like mass producing things and working with like factories, in which case you're immediately shut down. Some big companies are more litigious about fan art, like Disney and Nintendo absolutely hate anything to do with fan art. So they will shut down anybody selling art that they've drawn or plushies they've made or just anything. Smaller games, usually each game will have a policy that they put out. So I will check and see if they have, like, we don't want people making fan art, or fan art is totally cool. And then based on that, that's kind of where I work with. The Cult of the Lamb developers, Their policy is pretty much they know people are making fan art. They think it's awesome that people are making and selling things, but they don't want to, they will not promote it officially themselves, and they don't want other people to share links to it. You just have to find it organically yourself. Yeah, and connecting anything to the brand name as well is a big issue. So if somebody tells you to stop doing that, you need to stop doing it right away. So yeah, making stuffed animals like the Cult of the Lamb is a very gray zone where yeah, I can. Like we any plushie maker can really, but if they say stop, you stop immediately. And you are okay with that. You do not complain about that in any way. So that's where it is right now. Okay, I am going to get this one loaded in. This one, this top paw doesn't have any beans or anything. It's just going to have those same lines that I put on the other one, and that's purely so that I can line it up. On the official plushie that I make, on the little picture down there, uh, each of these lines will be where the color changes. So I'll have a couple of different shades of blue there and then like a stripe of gray through there. But this is just going to create those lines so I know where those color changes will be and see if they're in the right spot or if I need to move them around. Oh yeah, that's a thing too. So if a company like the super large companies like Disney or Nintendo, if they don't maintain their copyright and their IP there by allowing some people to make things without like a legal contract giving them the right, if they just let it go, they are at risk of losing those properties entirely. So like I have no problem with companies protecting their IP. I wouldn't want people stealing my artwork either. Uh, Large companies are just it stings a little bit more for small artists to get a cease and desist from a multi-million-dollar company when you are just barely paying rent. But small game companies and uh, like I think a good example of that was the damn it, what is the game? Among Us. When Among Us got super popular during the pandemic there, They very specifically asked people not to make fan art or plushies and things like that because they were planning on doing it themselves. So they did not want people doing that. And a lot of plushie makers who did make the plushies did get cease and desists and got like snippy over it. But it makes total sense because they were taking money away from something that the creators of Among Us were actively trying to make money on as well. The Cult of the Lamb plushies, I didn't start making and selling mine until they were completely out of stock, and Devolver had basically said that they didn't think they were going to make another run of plushies ever, but they'd keep people informed. So my plushies are not really competing against theirs, nor am I making the same thing that they are. I'm making my own version of the lamb based on like my own design. I'm not copying or trying to steal something that they made to take people away from them there. Whoop. Okay, I gotta change over to the lines on the other paw. I am just doing all of these lines in black because I don't want to change the thread out. I'm super lazy. And I'm going to cut along these. So I actually programmed the embroidery design here to have a thread line around it, and that is the exact line that I would need to cut this fabric out on anyways, so I don't have to trace it. But for the top part of the paw, I will actually be cutting out the paper pattern piece and somewhat tracing that onto the fabric, purely because these little V's here in the red do not show up in the outside line that I told it to embroider, and I want to know exactly where I'm supposed to be sewing those little guys. So I will cut out this top part and line it up properly there. So I do have music, but it's incredibly, incredibly quiet, I think. Um, so Judo had showed me how yesterday to do the music that wouldn't show up in the VOD, and it did show up in the VOD, so I don't know what I did wrong, and I didn't realize that until about 10 minutes before I was planning to stream today, so I just kind of left it where it is, and I was going to ask them for help tonight as well. Yes, links are allowed. Because I don't know how to make them not allowed. I was planning on making it like a redeem thing. Like if you want to post a link, you have to pay like points for it. But I don't know how to do that, and I don't have points, so yeah, links are allowed. Until you use them for nefarious purposes, and then there's no links. So I'm cutting away this part of the stabilizer because this is actually a permanent stabilizer that I want to stay behind the paw prints there. I don't want it between the paw prints though, so I'm just getting rid of that little bit to free it. That way everything but the paw pads will stretch. Yeah, okay. I need to get my smaller scissors for this. Alt, I feel like you're committing crimes here. Let's see. Let me pull up Discord. Oh no. I gave you power and immediately went to your potato head. Terrible. Terrible, terrible. I have made a tactical error. Okay, Discord is starting, so 5 minutes from now we should be good, and I can click on links. And then the rest of this just tears away super easy. Okay, so there is the front of the paw test. Yeah, there's still some of the little pink bits from the paw pads that stuck through.